Now we will have some discussion. You've heard the views of the pros and cons, the fors and against, that the future of money and payments will be the way it traditionally has been or the way it might evolve. I guess before I go and ask for any comments from the folks listening, does anyone want to challenge anything that anyone else said?
I'll just challenge the order of John, because we ranked on the extremist side here.
Well, you're on the right-hand side, which is conservative and traditional. They're on the left-hand side, which is socialist and upstart.
Oh, yeah, I'm on.
You should be ultra-liberal.
Oh,
that's his point.
Ah, that's a tall order.
Okay.
Let's say we've got the guys who think that payments will be radically different on the left-hand side, the guys who think it's traditional on the right-hand side, which is the way that most politics works. Does anyone want to make a comment? Does anyone have a thought or a view around Bitcoins, around the way in which wireless alternative payments works, the way in which SWIFT works, the way in which payments processing works per se, before we move into formal debate? Far away, sir.
Thank you. I don't think that we should oppose these two kinds of payments. I mean, they can live together because they are both very useful in certain fields, no?
So what you're saying is that we'll have a hybrid.
Exactly.
There's no opposition here.
Everyone.
So have we created a false divide between these two in terms of, to be honest, I don't think there's a false divide. The proposition that we were making is everything going to be in the future brand spanking new, which is what he's saying, I think that's what you're saying, or is it going to just be a hybrid evolution of everything that's gone before, which is what these guys are saying? I think you're actually in the middle there somewhere.
Well, what we strongly believe in is that you have a certain right, and that is totally free from any secure transactions. That can be free from secure transactions. So what we strongly believe in is independent organizations. Mm-hmm. You said decentralized banks. That's what you said. Well, we believe in decentralized organizations. There can be small organizations that can exchange certain values or certain rights.
But you still live on top of the traditional infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas you're trying to displace that infrastructure. Well, not you personally,
but
the Bitcoin structure.
I can comment on the gentleman's question about the hybrid approach, though, because just as I talked about the separation of the payments network and the unit of account, what a lot of organizations that are centralized are missing out on is that there's an opportunity to co-opt Bitcoin and to take it where they want it to go. For example, SWIFT and Bitcoin, Visa and Bitcoin could potentially coexist if those organizations ignored the fact that it was a network and treated it only as a unit of account. It would co-opt the unit of account currency. And I worked at Visa, so I cleared for 155 different currencies. They were all national political currencies. There's nothing today that is technically stopping PayPal from processing in Bitcoin, or for that matter, for Visa processing in Bitcoin. It will be very disruptive to them, and they'll have to fit into Bitcoin's paradigm because authorization and settlement will be merged. There won't be separate auth and clearing functions. But I just wanted to point that out because the hybrid approach is something that is possible, and that's actually the opportunity for banks and Bitcoin.
I mean, as you say that, John, I saw a lovely quote this week, which is, money is just a way of keeping score. And if you think about it that way, data is the way we keep score now. It's not money even, it's data. Exactly. So are we going to see SWIFT in your banking initiatives, Thierry, starting to process things in Bitcoins?
Maybe, if this works. It's on the bottom.
Oh yeah. It's, the traditional incumbent has to work out how to turn it on.
Yeah, I had the first mover's disadvantage. But I want to pick up on John's comments because for me, if I use the traditional definition of money, a way of exchanging things, a unit of account, like you said, and a store of value. And amazingly, I think differently than you. I think Bitcoin is really innovative in the exchange, how you make transactions go through, because this is the cryptographic methods that you use is really, really something very innovative. The unit of account, maybe, but I'm a bit challenged with the store value. I mean, would you put your money there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just to challenge the debate, because what is the trust behind that system? I think we could collaborate.
You could view it as a commodity like gold and silver. I mean, if you trade in bitcoins, you put $20 in there for a bitcoin in January, it's worth $115 a coin now. So you've made money.
Yeah, there are stocks that had the same effect.
Exactly. Apple.
I would like to answer something about that, about bitcoins and processing, because basically Atos as a transaction processing company, we do payments, but a lot of other things also. Basically, they have to be fast and secure transactions. We are absolutely scheme and unit of currency agnostic. So we're ready and we're very happy to handle Visa transactions, MasterCard transactions, Proton transactions, of course, because I love them, Bancontact, Mr. Cash, anything else, including also some closed loop systems we also have, so I'm sharing that with my neighbor. And basically, I was thinking that we have a lot of processing power and we have redundant data centers. I think we have a lot of processing power that is not being used. So I was thinking of possibly installing on the computers for their free time a copy of the Bitcoin miner. Am I going to say it or not? You know that a gaming network recently introduced the Bitcoin miner to use the spare CPU or GPU cycles of a couple of people. Okay, they stopped doing that. I'm saying this jokingly, but basically, even though Bitcoin processing or the clearing process isn't exactly the same as in a normal payment, I don't see why a company like Atos or any other company who is running data centers and who is really available full-time 24/7 could not participate in the Bitcoin movement or currency.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other comments or views? Yes, ma'am. Oh, running round to you.
Yes, hello. Pardon my ignorance, but it's the first time I hear about Bitcoin.
Well, then I've done my job.
Yes, exactly, and I'm happy to discover something new. But I'd like to know a bit more about the principle, because I understand this is a type of currency then, or I'm fully mistaken? It's not clear to me how you use Bitcoin. Who is on one side? Is it people like you and me exchanging movements? And what type of transactions? Just simple cash payments? For what type of products?
Well, for someone who's just discovering it like that, I think the easiest way to become involved is to use one of the online wallets.
Okay.
But
I can do that.
If you weren't doing that though, and back when you could download the client, it's as simple as downloading the client of Skype. The UI is very simple. It's simple to use. There's only send, receive, generate address, store addresses. Mm-hmm. So once you've done that and you have that client software running on your computer, remember they have many versions for mobile, but I'm thinking to compare it to Skype. It's just as simple because I can send you Bitcoin and you can receive it, and it's based on the same principles as secure email. Now I know that the world is happy today with naked email, so a lot of people don't use secure email, but the addressing system is very similar. When I send someone a secure email using PGP or encryption, I encrypt it using their public key. So the breakthrough in public key cryptography, as opposed to symmetric key cryptography, is that your address can be on a billboard. You can put your address here for everyone to see. It can be in the newspaper, but only you have the key to unlock that. And that's what a Bitcoin address is. It's like a numbered Swiss bank account, or let's forget Switzerland. Let's say Liechtenstein. It's a long account number that is yours, and only you have the key to unlock it. Another analogy would be for your door at your house. If you had two keys for your door, you had one key to lock it, but it was a different key that unlocked it. That's how public key cryptography works, and that's how Bitcoin addresses work.
So
okay,
if I interpret what you said accurately, to try and answer the question specifically, you download a Bitcoin app from an authorized Bitcoin
Bitcoin.org.
And you buy some Bitcoins in your currency,
okay.
euros, well, or dollars or whatever you use. And then once you've got those, you can trade those globally, anywhere, without any fees or any bank involved or any central bank involved, as a trusted currency, fully encrypted, fully secure, fully tradable. And if at any point you think, I want to get my money out of that, in terms of, I no longer want Bitcoin, so I want to go back to euros, dollars, or pounds, or whatever it is you use, you just go back and click the button and say, give it back.
Okay. Fully clarified. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Can you go to another currency? Can you buy Bitcoin in euros and then get dollars?
Oh, yeah.
Trade them back?
Well, it would be a multiple, that would be a two-part transaction. But the currency pairs that are traded are just like the cross rates in foreign exchange. The leading volume is dollar Bitcoin, second is euro Bitcoin, and I believe the third now is, I think it's either Australian or Russian.
There's a whole
I think
bunch
it's
of
Russian.
exchanges around the world, like MTGOX is the biggest, and that's a dollar trading Bitcoin exchange. And you basically go onto any of those Bitcoin trading exchanges, a bit like Euroclear, well, not Euroclear, sorry, a bit like going onto a London Stock Exchange or a Euronext, and you basically buy at the trading price at that moment of that stock, in this case of that commodity, Bitcoin. And it is like a commodity, it's like gold and silver and oil, it's a commodity. You buy it at that price in your local currency, then you trade it worldwide, buying anything.
But do you see people doing arbitrage between currencies? Like people trying to...
the arbitrage is possible between exchanges, and the spreads are sufficiently wide. The problem with arbitrage, though, is that the liquidity, there's not enough liquidity in all of the exchanges, and it's not so fast to get your money in and out. But those things will improve. Right now, the arbitrageurs are the real cowboys out there.
Hi.
This one?
On? Yeah. Actually, the first question is, I have two of them. Is the added value of Bitcoins, when you compare it to shares or other financial instruments now, is that it is not going through a clearing system? And if so, after a while, don't you think that if, for instance, the volume gets higher and it creates an interest around the globe, don't you think that at some point it will be regulated?
Well, that's a lot of questions in one question. I think the first part of your question is scalability. So Bitcoin does have scalability challenges, and those are being addressed. Those will evolve over time. A lot of that has to do with the size of the block and the transaction fee mechanism. But the other part of your question about the regulation is we're already seeing that today. Yesterday there was an announcement that Department of Homeland Security closed down the Mt. Gox account in the United States, even though Mt. Gox as a company is based in Japan. And it was because they had U.S. customers that were using a U.S. facility to transfer the money, and they were operating as an unlicensed money transmitter. So the regulation is already here. It's just that the United States, unfortunately, is more aggressive about it, and I think that the EU is more forward-looking on it because of the e-money directive that's already been in place.
Eve.
I would like to ask, we are among friends here, right? So I would like to ask you to leave aside the corporate speech for a moment. Yeah? You're payment specialists. Can you elaborate and explain what do you see as the strength of the new money, so the traditional money? What do you see as being the strength of the new money and vice versa? Because it's going to give an indication of what are your own challenges to remain credible going forward.
You go ahead.
I might take the first part of
Jean-Michel?
at least an answer to that. Is what I appreciate very much in the Bitcoin methodology or way of operating is that, okay, for the time being there are no transaction fees, but people are being paid by the Bitcoins being mined. But over time, that mechanism is going to stop, and there's going to be a point in time where Bitcoins will not be mined anymore by signing the blockchain, which means that people will have to start adding an incentive or a kickback into the transaction, some amount of change that is not used by the transaction, to make it worthwhile processing. Otherwise, nobody will be processing that and dedicating computing power to that. And I think that's a very nice mechanism, because that means that the fees in the long run for a Bitcoin type system will be self-regulating. And we all know that one of the issues, especially in retail payments, is that the merchants are always complaining that they're paying too much for their payments. And they're paying a lot, and I'm not going to go back into the debate about the interchanges and things like that that are decided by the major schemes. Okay, it's their right, it's their scheme, they can impose whatever they like, but I mean, it's not really an equilibrium condition. And so what I like very much in the new type of money is that the transaction fees should, over time, level out to exactly what they should be. And I think that's a very interesting approach.
He should come over to my side here.
Well, as soon as I find a Bitcoin miner that I can install on our hardware systems, I'll do that.
Well, to comment on that, I really believe that the future will bring no transaction fees at all. That depends.
I'm out of a job then.
But I really believe that the strengths will be with the consumers, deciding which payment system they will use. And there can be other benefits for organizations to ask a zero transaction fee. But, well, that's my belief, that at the end, no transaction fee will be there in the future.
I can't believe I have somebody from Netherlands saying people will be doing things for free.
Well, in Holland, we are always complaining it's too expensive.
I think the funny thing about
again, on transaction fees, I think they should be transparent. Because, okay, a Google is doing free transfer with the Google Wallet. There still is somebody behind that has to do something, and somebody has to be paid for that. So saying that it's free, okay, it looks free, but somebody has to pay for the effort, the development, the security, whatever about that. And I think it's better to know where the money is coming from and to have a really clear view and transparency on fees than having, in fact, fees being kickbacks from other systems. So just my point of view.
I think there's two things that's funny in Caesar's statement. One is that Google has announced free payments via Gmail, and it's this debate we were having earlier on with the Innotribe guys here about the Innotribe program this fall of what the future of money subject should be, and part of it was saying the new business model in terms of how you find your piece of the pie and how you expand and find a good piece of that pie is going to be a big question, because right now every other new entrant, particularly those that are gorillas like Amazon, Apple, Google, will try and reduce the account fee structure. Bitcoin, which you could say is a gorilla, in the sense of new models. They're creating new business models, and the old business model, therefore, is dying on the vine unless it's reinvented. So how do you reinvent the business model to create something that still gives you a slice of the pie that's healthy? And if you don't reinvent it, do you actually find that you've cannibalized yourself or someone has cannibalized you? And that is a big question, which is part of this debate, which is the future. Is it familiar? Is it evolutionary? Or is it revolutionary? Is it completely different? Kosta, I know that you had a point to make.
Yeah, I had a question for John. And my name is Kosta, and we were connected through many things, but I'm dying to shake your hands afterwards. So. But I had a question for you, is really about, so I'm really a fan of Bitcoin and the history of Bitcoin, more on the how of Bitcoin than the what. And so I'd like to ask you a question. Are you the Japanese guy that is behind Bitcoin?
Satoshi.
I'm dying to know.
No, I'm not Satoshi Nakamoto. But I have emailed with him.
You did?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So we'll exchange some stories.
He has been out of the picture since 2010. So just vanished.
So I have made it my personal goal as head of innovation at Swift to connect with the guy. So.
Yeah, I think that will be the journalist story of the decade. It's
Absolutely.
like finding Osama bin Laden.
You were saying earlier on you think he's dead.
What's that?
You were saying earlier on you think he's dead.
Well, no, some people think he's dead because he hasn't redeemed any money. I mean, if his personal stash is estimated now to be about between $150 and $200 million. U.S., which would, you know, change your lifestyle. So what would you be waiting for?
We'll take one final comment and then we'll have to come to a close.
I have a challenging observation to the new world or the new money people. It's known that cigarettes are bad for your health, right? It's known for 50 more years now. And still, the tobacco industry manages that more than 1 billion cigarettes are sold every day. And why do you think the financial industry is less powerful as a lobbying entity that they will not stick to these millions and billions of money and jobs for many, 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 many years to come in the current traditional world of payments?
Can I take that first?
Why not?
Well, I think that you've outlined what the battle will be. I mean, the entrenched, centralized side has powerful lobbying. But the point to remember, though, is Bitcoin wasn't really created to have you know, cool peer-to-peer payments with low transaction fees. That's just a nice side benefit. Bitcoin's raison d'etre is it does not have a single point of failure. So because it's decentralized, it cannot be turned off. And your question presupposes a lot about the power of turning something like that off. Because if you look at the recording industry today with copyrights and music and movies, they put teenagers in jail. Why would they be going after the endpoints if they could just easily attack the peer-to-peer network and the file sharing? Okay, well, Bitcoin is like file sharing for money. And you can attack the endpoints, which is the exchanges, but you won't be able to attack the core unless you turn off the entire internet. And that means turning off Facebook and Amazon and eBay and everything else.
You've got to switch off the internet.
Well, they do in Syria.
There you go. I think we're moving to conclusions, and so I just wanted each of you to give a summary statement as to, based on what we've debated, discussed, had questions around, and heard, your own views now of the future of money. Is it going to be evolutionary or revolutionary? Is it going to be more of what we are familiar with or completely different and not the same? And rather than going from proposer to opposer, we'll start with the seconder of the opposition. Cesar, what's the future?
Well, I strongly believe in evolution, by the way. So I don't think it will be a revolution. But well, it's like with everything that was very strong in the past. At a certain moment, also IBM almost died when they were very strong. So we will see. I strongly believe small organizations, at least, will be able to get a big pie from the traditional world. And we will see whether the traditional world is strong enough to stay there in the future.
Jean-Michel?
I'd say from my experience in payments, and I've been there for quite some time, is that people like choice, basically. And one of the opening statements was customers and consumers want choice. And a lot of payments are very low involvement activities. When I'm buying my lunch or buying a sandwich or whatever, I'm not going to think much about it, I'm just going to pay. And so it's almost a habit. And if I look at what I have in my wallet today, I have a credit card, I have 2 debit cards like most Belgians. One of them is using Proton. I also have the new electronic lunch voucher check, so I have a lot of payment means. And I believe from experience that there's not one means of payment, whichever it is, that's going to displace everything. I think people like to have the choice, like to have the convenience, like to have different features and different payments. If I'm buying on internet, I'll be using my credit card, but also because I get an added insurance on my purchases, so I won't be using my debit card on internet. And I think there's room enough in the payment industry for newcomers and new initiatives. Some payment schemes and methods are being phased out, like Proton, for example. There are newcomers like Bitcoin. I think even if they have a very disruptive basis, basically, it's all about a payment. And a payment is becoming more and more a commodity today. I believe that there's much more value, not in processing the payment, but adding value on top of the payment. We're talking about loyalty, we're talking about registration, we're talking about interaction like you've seen here. So even while newcomers are welcome, and I think they should be there, they should thrive, I think they're not going to displace everything today. So I also believe much more in evolution than revolution. We'll see.
Okay. I think it's pretty clear that I'm on the revolutionary side by disrupting the unit of account. I want to say that Bitcoin is a digital bearer instrument, and it's made possible by a cryptographic operation known as an RPOW, which stands for Reusable Proof of Work, started by Hal Finney. And as a digital bearer instrument, you don't have the option that you do with a lot of other monetary payment systems or even software applications. There's no button that says forgot password. And that's the key question to ask yourself if you have a digital bearer instrument or if you don't. And if you can click forgot password or do a chargeback and get your money back, then you don't have a digital bearer instrument, because a digital bearer instrument is like this. If I give it to you, you have it, and I no longer have it. Me losing my computer in the ocean that had all my Bitcoin is the same as me burning this 50 euro note. And I want to end and conclude with a rhetorical question, because somebody here brought up store of value, which I spend a lot of time thinking about and writing about. To answer that question, just think of your own situation, and 50 years from now, if you were going to be alive yourself or if you were going to pass on something to your heirs, would you rather pass on $10,000 worth of euro notes? I'm sorry, 10,000 euros in euro notes, or 10,000 euro worth of Facebook credits? Or 50 years from now, would you rather have 10,000 euro worth of Bitcoin? And I think your answer to that will tell you a lot about where you believe the future of money is going and what you believe in Bitcoin as a store of value. So thank you for your attention.
Last but not least, Thierry.
Well, I share a bit everything that was said. I think all of us here represent ecosystems in payments. And today, they're all interconnected. So if you need to change value between one and the other. So I think we all have to learn from each other. My conclusion would be from the more old money part. We want to see what is happening. We want to keep challenging ourselves to do things as best as we can. From the other extreme on the new money, I think there's a lot to learn also with regulation. There's a reason why it's there. We all need certainty. We all need trust. And so the overall benefits of all these ecosystems interacting is about pushing us to obtain something that we all want. Yeah. So that is really my own conclusion, and actually being polarized for this exercise, there's a lot of similarities that we share on the open network of SWIFT, even as an ecosystem, as the Bitcoin. And I'm here to see where it will be in a few years, and I think we all want to see where it will be in 10 years' time.
Okay, we'll look forward to a bit of SWIFT. A vote. You've heard the arguments for and against, and purely because we wanted to polarize it. It was, is it going to be familiar and evolutionary, or will it be revolutionary and radically different? You've heard about the ideas of a decentralized approach rather than having a centralized approach, the idea that everything should be in the hands of the customer rather than in the hands of the system. Equally, from a regulatory compliance viewpoint, you've heard that from high availability, high resilience, we need to have infrastructures that are organized and managed by central organizations rather than decentralized organizations. Do you agree or disagree? If you agree with centralization and high availability and regulation and compliance, then it's evolutionary. If you think it's actually radically different, decentralized, in the hands of the customer and the corporate, then it's radically different and revolutionary. Can you raise your hand if you think it's going to be evolutionary and familiar? And revolutionary and different. We've turned this group around. Because now, having started the evening where you all said it to be revolutionary and different, you've all just agreed it'll be evolutionary and familiar. Well done, guys. You win. Sorry, John.